Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, Blister devotes himself to science. He really puts the rat in laboratory. As you may recall, the equal rights activist Jana claimed that she could better the lives of people and animals if Blister would only take part in her scientific studies. Enticed with ample food, Blister signed on. He'd better hope Jana is not some amateur chemist, or else he'll only get food, periodically. Once again, my dear listeners, I have a fundamental question to ask you. This one boils down to who you trust and who you don't trust. At any given moment, lots of people can tell you lots of things. You believe in what some say, and you doubt what others say. So here's my question. Why should you never believe what an atom says? Because they make up literally everything. Now that I have your mind focused on what really matters, I'd also be curious to know, how often do you think about the air? I wonder this because we absolutely must have air to survive, and yet, if you're like me, you probably only think about air when it inconveniences you. Like when it smells funny, when it's the wrong temperature, when it's moving too fast, or not fast enough, or when it's in short supply, like after running up a bunch of stairs too fast. The rest of the time, we go about our lives, never really thinking about the air as it cycles through our lungs and keeps us alive. By the same token, we rely on electricity, and yet, how often do you think about it? When do you flip a switch or press a button and think, I have just channeled electricity through a circuit. I have commanded electron particles to do my bidding. Lights, phones, cars, ovens, refrigerators, televisions, remote controls, satellites, space probes, Wi-Fi, computers, toilets. The things we rely on electricity. Isn't it strange how easily we disregard something so essential? For centuries, we observed electric energy, and we knew it was mildly entertaining, such as when you shuffle along a rug and then touch the nearest person to shock them. But it wasn't until 1821 that we realized electricity could be useful. In that year, Michael Faraday assembled the first electric motor. He generated electricity and made it move an object. The discovery meant that electricity could be put to work. If you needed a crank cranked, you could make electricity do it. If you needed light, well then have electricity make it. Need your voice to carry over long distances, but you just can't be bothered to shout? Make electricity carry it across telephone wires or radio waves. Electricity quickly arose as our most useful and magnificent tool. To be sure, many scientists and inventors around the world deserve credit for wiring electricity into every aspect of modern life, but none more so than Nikola Tesla. Tesla's understanding of electricity's potential surpassed everybody else's. At a time when people were amped to purchase a light bulb that could shine for half a day, Tesla was prattling on about Wi-Fi signals, streaming online music and sports, artificial intelligence, robots, and self-driving cars. He envisioned people carrying around these portable devices they could use to call or message each other, or send videos and pictures. In other words, Tesla imagined the modern smartphone roughly 130 years before it was invented. You're probably thinking, wow, people must have loved this magical genius Tesla guy. Unfortunately, they didn't. His vast and intense creativity frightened people. Many thought he was crazy. And to be fair, Tesla exhibited plenty of odd behaviors. My favorite, he barfed whenever he saw a woman wearing pearl earrings. But how can we expect a mind that perceives 100 years faster than everyone else's to produce typical behavior? Perhaps we should alter the old saying from "don't judge a book by its cover" to, I don't know, "don't judge a genius for barfing." Or, well, you know what I mean. Tesla is a good reminder that not all minds work alike, and human beings benefit massively from these differences. Episode 16: The Animal Kingdom. After crossing the dim thumb, the macadam road gave way to gravel. Rocks spat up from under the carriage wheels. The city surrendered to wilderness. Tall trees tangled above, shading the ground with twilight. Houses swelled into estates protected by stone walls or iron fences. Yes, Blister percolated. He rubbed his paws like a miner ready for pay dirt. The carriage rounded a sharp curve and confronted what looked like a castle slammed into a gingerbread house. Or a junkyard. Towers and turrets, topped with rusted brass cones, weeded crookedly up. Around these, steep-pitched gables nosed out in all directions. Black iron coils, brackets, and spindles webbed along the eaves or sprouted up from ridges like hair standing on end. Rows of dormer windows sagged. Entire chunks of roof seemed to have been bitten off here and there. Into and out of these jagged openings, small blackbirds swooped. The more Blister noticed, the more his nose wrinkled. The driver directed the horse off the road and onto the lane leading to the dilapidated junk castle. The horse whinnied and reared. The driver coaxed the animal with a few cracks of the leather crop. At last, the horse complied, but even then, it proceeded reluctantly, moving no faster than a funereal march. The carriage parked at the bottom of paved terraces and flowing staircases leading up to the castle. These grand walkways were lined with fancy stone balustrades, topped with stone swans. Most of the swans were crumbling and headless. Blister hopped down and dashed behind a massive cracked urn that held the skeletal branches of a very dead plant. The driver opened the carriage door, and Jana emerged. He asked if he should wait, but was instructed to return to Atramental Avenue. He clicked the reins, and the horse took off in a spray of rocks.
"Whoa, boy, steady on,"
the driver urged until distance erased his voice. "Nice place," Blister said. "I suppose." Jana wrinkled her nose. "I grew up here, thus its charms are lost on me. But it serves well enough as a quiet place to conduct my studies." The heavy front door had to be shoved on raspy hinges. Blister followed Jana into what might have once been a lavish home. The plaster walls were as rough as day-old porridge. Dingy cobwebs hung like wet laundry from the chandeliers. The wallpaper wrinkled like boiled potato skins. The furniture was furry with dust and mold. The drapes and lampshades were brittle. Tribes of furniture, rugs, lamps, crystal chandeliers, drapes, paintings, vases, and other baubles and knickknacks crowded every room, hall, and corridor, but neglect made them wild. At least a few beams of sunlight orphaned in through stained glass windows, crusted with dust and grime. The resulting light mashed blue, red, and purple bruises on the tattered, rotting rugs. Jana prowled through the house, snapping switches to power up electric lights. "You have electricity?" Here? Blister spluttered. This was the first private residence in the city to have power. First, the power company hooked us to our own Westinghouse generator. Now the technology is better, and we can connect directly to the city's power grid. It was all Papa's idea. His last good one, anyway. Jana unpinned her hat and frisbeed it across the room, where it whapped a portrait painting of an older gentleman. His white hair, beard, and gray wool suit were all neatly trimmed. He posed in a cozy leather chair, with a book blossomed open on his knees. A village of other books populated the little table next to the chair. Blister thought the old man looked oddly familiar. Unlike the rest of the family, Papa adored all things modern. Jana gestured to a line of family portraits. Judging from the historical progression of clothes and hairstyles, Blister surmised that hers was an old family, dating back to the times of shining armor knights. Jana next directed Blister through a set of winged doors that stretched higher than a ladder could reach. Blister gasped and reeled back against the wall as soon as he entered the room. Stuffed and mounted animals crowded the vast space, including a brown bear, a gazelle, a wolf, a giraffe. Several geese hung from strings and posed as if in migratory flight. Deer, kangaroos, raccoons, snakes, various ducks and hawks, rabbits, wombats, tigers, manatees, a capybara, a koala, lizards, insects, an ostrich, a lion, a dolphin. Animals of all kinds and sizes posed in an eternally silent display. All that seemed missing was a giant tortoise with Madame Putresca on its back. Blister shivered. I thought you said you helped animals. These animals weren't hunted for sport. They were collected as scientific specimens. Papa was one of the great animal scientists of all time. And I suppose you carry that torch now. Sort of, she offered with a dreamy nod. Have a seat. I'll fetch some tea. Even after she was gone, Blister remained backed up against the wall as the old house groaned, ticked, and shuddered. He wondered what Muck would have made of this strange woman and the strange house. He wondered what Muck was learning from Putresca. He wondered if he could just go back to Putresca's caverns, and if he asked politely, maybe they would include him. A fierce fire scorched the rest of that thought. Blister did not fraternize, never had and never would. He did not need anyone. He was cunning and clever, and so long as there was food coming his way, he could easily endure a spooky old house full of dead stuffed animals. Blister edged into the center of the space, realizing the room was circular. He supposed they were in one of the copper-topped towers. The long windows slicing down the tower walls provided a foggy, gritty light. Sections of the curved wall housed bookshelves and glass display cases lined with insect specimens skewered on needles. A spiral staircase swirled up to the first story of the tower. After that, one had to climb mounted ladders to reach more bookshelves and glass displays. Back on the main floor, several slim doors marked the entrances into neighboring rooms. Blister was glad they were all shut. To his right, he saw a desk as big as an island. Scientific tools, books, beakers, and papers jungled the desk and even vined their way to the floor. Amidst the jumble stood a framed photograph of a young man looking rather punctuational. A mustache hyphenated his upper lip. His nose was a long, straight exclamation point. Pomade parted his dark hair down the center and formed a curly bracket. His head tilted at a parenthetical angle. The corner of the gray picture contained a neat cursive inscription. To JVS. Be alone. That is where ideas are born. NT. Elsewhere in the library, there were thin herds of rolling blackboards, scrawled with notes. A flock of metal stands, tripods, and easels displayed giant diagrams of various skeletons, drawings of animals, and world maps. To his left, Blister noted a pair of leather chairs guarding a wide-mouthed fireplace, yawning black soot. He climbed into one chair and blew a small crescent into the snowy droves of dust. He sat, hugging his tail, to keep it clean, of course. Blister felt certain that one of these two chairs posed in the painting with Jana's papa. Each chair had its own little round table nearby. Both tables were piled with books and other oddments. Wind-up toys perched atop the books. They were very elaborate constructions. Ballerinas on a stage, a magician bowing, hand to his hat. One toy used a mirror to replicate a frozen lake dotted with several ice skaters. Another imitated a cozy room complete with chairs and a fireplace and a mouse on the floor. So many wind-up toys. Intrigued, Blister cranked the keys and watched the toys come to life. The ice skaters glided and twirled over the glass. The mouse similarly darted around the floor until a cat sprang out of a hiding place and blocked it. The ballerinas danced, and the mechanized magician removed his hat, which enabled the rabbit inside it to pop up over and over. Blister's curiosity spurred him to pick up one of the ice skaters. He felt the magnetic tug between the skates and the mirror. He understood now how each toy achieved its magic. Magnets ran under the ice or the floors, driving the smooth movements of skaters, mouse, and dancers. The rabbit hopping out of the hat must have been pushed by the force of opposing magnets. Ferraginous fun! Blister invented a fancy word in order to do his best imitation of Muck. When the toys were still, the gloom seeped in again. Squeaks, croaks, whimpers, and howls arrived from the farthest reaches of the house. No doubt these sounds came from rotting frameworks shifting, or the blackbirds roosting upstairs, or old hinges creaking. Nonetheless, to Blister, they seemed to effuse from the animals in the room, all frozen mid-prowl, mid-graze, mid-swoop, or mid-snarl. He scrutinized the mouths full of ivory fangs, just to be sure they did not move. He studied the glossy marble eyes to make sure they were fixed, lifeless, and unblinking. Just then, a pair of eyelids flickered from a not-too-distant corner of the room. Blink, blink. Egads! What other creature is in that frightful tower? Poor Blister. He assumed helping Jana would earn him a bit of free food. Is it possible he'll wind up stuffed? Tune in next week. In the meantime, head over to blisterandmuck.com to check out the fascinating collection of electricity books and videos. I assembled it just for you, even though my producers disapproved. They think repeating electrical information is revolting. There's just one more episode before the Season 1 finale. Want to make sure you don't miss any of the action? Simply click on the subscribe button and you'll get an email the moment new episodes release. And you'll know precisely when Season 2 launches. This show is 100% listener supported. Listeners support the show when they tell their friends, "Hey, I'm loving this podcast called Blister and Muck. I think you'd enjoy it too." You can also support the show by liking it and sharing it on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Hashtag Blister and Muck. Hashtag Conspirators. Hashtag OMG, stop starving your soul and tune in to the world's best podcast, honey. Use the contact form at blisterandmuck.com to tell me what surprised you in this episode. Or think like Nikola Tesla. What amazing, impossible inventions do you imagine will exist over 100 years from now? You can always send me or your favorite character an email addressed to contact@blisterandmuck.com. I want to heartily thank the donors who generously provide financial support for the show. Your donations cover the costs of music, sound effects, and distributing the podcast across the interwebs. Special thanks to composer Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Kevin MacLeod played the piano. Loyalty Freak Music made the spooky sounds. Additional music from Mon Plaisir. And I am so very grateful for my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.